Thank you. Cool. So the goal of this week is to work on, or today and the starting of next week is to work on your rough drafts. So the goal of last week was for you to write a rough draft. Um, so there we go. Can you open up that rough draft wherever you have it electronically so that we can kind of do some work on it today? When we watch The Hate You Give the movie, a lot of you enjoyed just kind of hanging out and watching a movie together. So, in the spirit of the holiday season, if there are no objections on Thursday, I'd like us to do a little bit of work, but I would really like to show you also um, an animated version of Peter and the Wolf that was put out in 2006, but is really great. So if anybody objects to that, let me know. If not, we'll take the last 30 minutes of Thursday and kind of watch a little animated short together. Yeah, next week, the last time we meet together before holiday break is next Thursday. And so that's when we probably do it. And I'll remind you next week, and I'll let you know if there's any objections in the chat or in person when I check in with you. Okay, so I'm kind of stalling so that you can get your electronic version of your rough draft out. Okay, so today we're going to look at 3 different writing techniques that are specific to narrative writing, but also are going to help you improve the specificity, I can talk, and quality of your rough drafts. And all of in the assignment sheet, I listed out a bunch of different characteristics of typically good This I Believe essays. And so for today and Monday and the first part of Thursday, I just want to cover some of those and then have you kind of try out some of them in your own personal essays. And some are going to work for you and some might not. But the first one I want to look at today is this idea of writing about something very specific. That could be a person, it could be a place, it could be a memory. The example we're going to look at today to start out with, this person who is the president of Nike, or was at the time, or vice president of Nike. He's going to reflect back on a memory from his childhood that kind of shifted his belief. So let's look at that. So this is available to you. It's in the slideshow, but also, so if you want this document itself, let me kind of show you a couple ways to get there. I know I am projecting it. So, I mean, obviously you could do it by the weekly slideshow presentation, but it's also under this I Believe writing techniques if you want to have, and we're looking currently at technique number 1. So if you want to look at it that way, instead of me just projecting it, feel free to get on there. It looks like 2 of us are already on there, okay? So the way that I kind of set this up, techniques at the top, and then it's very patriotic, right? Red, white, and blue. I didn't intend it to be that way. So I just was commenting over here in this right-hand column about what the author, and his name is Howard White, is doing over here in his writing, okay? So he is going to start with an introduction, and this would be qualified as a hook. So he starts by talking about who he is, kind of introducing himself, but he doesn't just say, you know, hello, my name's Howard and I'm 37 and I'm real cool. He's saying specific things about him that he's going to use later in his essay, but then hopefully he's going to kind of pique your interest. You're like, oh, this is a guy I should listen to. And then he's going to switch over into his belief statement. And then what he does after that, hey, Bauman's here. Did you see that? After that, he kind of goes into this technique of using a very specific memory to explain how he arrived at his statement. Okay, there's more after that, but let's start with with looking at how he did that. Okay, I will read to you. I'm not as good a reader as Mr. Bauman. He is a very good reader, but I'm proficient. I guess he's highly proficient. I work at a company where there are about a gazillion employees. I can't say that I know all of them by name, but I know a fair share of them. I think that almost all of them know me. I'd say that's the reason I've been able to go wherever it is I've made it in this world. It's all based on one simple principle. I believe every single person deserves to be acknowledged, however small or simple the greeting. When I was about 10 years old, so he's going back into this specific memory, I was walking down the street with my mother. We stopped to speak to Mr. Lee. See how specific he is? He's not just, we just stopped to speak to this guy, he's naming them. I was busy trying to bullseye the O in the stop sign with a rock. I knew I could see Mr. Lee any old time around the neighborhood, so I didn't pay any attention to him. After we passed Mr. Lee, my mom stopped me and said something that has stuck with me from that day until now. She said, "You let that be the last time you ever walk by somebody and not open up your mouth and speak, because even a dog can wag his tail when it passes you on the street." See, so again, like he's giving a lot of specifics, but he even went so far as to give the dialogue that his mother used. Now, if you don't remember, if you're using this technique and you don't remember the exact dialogue from the memory, make it up. Like nobody's gonna know. Nobody was like there with the recorder is like, that's not exactly what that person said. You know, make sure it illustrates your point and stuff. Don't make them crazy or anything, but don't think that you have to remember the exact words. Okay, so now what he's gonna do is he's gonna transition, right? So he's going to explain the importance of what he just told us. And then he's going to explain how that kind of changed him and shaped his and impacted his life. Okay. So that's the next section. And then he's going to transition over. He's going to reconnect with the beginning of his essay. So he started this essay saying he's like, you know, the CEO of Nike. Well, he didn't actually say that, but he's going to get to that. And so he's going to reconnect with the beginning of his essay, showing how his belief system played into his day-to-day life. And then he's going to connect. At the end, he connects all the different parts because he's jumping around in times, right? So he's doing present, and then he went to the past, then he explained the importance of the past, and then he's going to go to in present. So he's going to kind of tie those times together. And then he's going to offer you into his beliefs. So he's going to bring you as a reader into it. And he's going to say, hey, why don't you try this belief out? It's going to help you in this way. Okay. So that's what he's doing as a writer. So let's then witness, behold his writing. That phrase sounds simple to me, but it's been a guidepost for me and the foundation of who I am. When you write an essay like this, you look into the mirror and you see who you are and what makes up your character. I like that he used that analogy to the mirror. I realized mine was cemented that day when I was 10 years old. Even then, I started to see when I spoke to somebody, they spoke back, and that felt good. It's not just something that I believe in, it's become a way of life. I believe that every person deserves to feel someone acknowledge their presence, no matter how humble they may be or even how important. At work, I always used to say hello to the founder of the company, that would be Mr. Phil Knight, and ask him how our business was doing. But I was also speaking to people in the cafe and the people that cleaned the buildings, and I asked how their children were doing. I remembered after a few years of passing by the founder, Mr. Phil Knight, I had the courage to ask him for a meeting. We had a great talk. At a certain point, I asked him how far he thought I could go in this company. He says, if you want to, you can get all the way to this seat. I've become vice president, but that hasn't changed the way I approach people. I still follow my mother's advice. I speak to everyone I see, no matter where I am. I've learned that speaking to people can create a pathway into their world. and it lets them come into mind as well, or two. The day you speak to someone who has their head held down, and when they lift it up and smile, you realize how powerful it is just to open your mouth and say hello. Okay, so that's a really good. He used a lot of techniques in there, but he used particularly that using of the past story, right, and connecting it back to the future. Back to the Future. That's a good movie, actually. Back to the Present. Again, the first one, Back to the Future, is best. So that's a good example in an essay and how to kind of deconstruct it there to use that. So again, if that helps you, great. Let's. So the second technique. I have a little video here that kind of illustrates it. And so that's to use like really vivid descriptions of both imagery, but to engage all of the senses. So you're not just talking about what you might see, but how you might feel, how you might smell, what you might hear, those types of things. So this little TED Ed video is talking about the world of fiction writing, but it applies to the narrative writing that we're doing. So just kind of substitute when it's talking about fiction, it still applies to what we're doing. Anyway, so that is enough on that. So let's just kind of see what this technique is explored.
We read fiction for many reasons. To be entertained, to find out whodunit, to travel to strange new planets, to be scared, to laugh, to cry, to think, to feel, to be so absorbed that for a while we forget where we are. So how about writing fiction? How do you suck your readers into your stories? With an exciting plot? Maybe. Fascinating characters? Probably. Beautiful language? Perhaps. Billy's legs are noodles. The ends of her hair are poison needles. Her tongue is a bristly sponge, and her eyes are bags of bleach. Did that description almost make you feel as queasy as Billy? We grasp that Billy's legs aren't actually noodles. To Billy, they feel as limp as cooked noodles. It's an implied comparison, a metaphor. So why not simply write it like this? Billy feels nauseated and weak. Chances are, the second description wasn't as vivid to you as the first. The point of fiction is to cast a spell, a momentary illusion that you are living in the world of the story. Fiction engages the senses, helps us create vivid mental simulacra of the experiences the characters are having. Stage and screen engage some of our senses directly. We see and hear the interactions of the characters and the setting. But with prose fiction, all you have is static symbols on a contrasting background. If you describe the story in matter-of-fact, non-tactile language, the spell risks being a weak one. Your reader may not get much beyond interpreting the squiggles. She will understand what Billy feels like, but she won't feel what Billy feels. She'll be reading, not immersed in the world of the story, discovering the truths of Billy's life at the same time that Billy herself does. Fiction plays with our senses: taste, smell, touch, hearing, sight, and the sense of motion. It also plays with our ability to abstract and make complex associations. Look at the following sentence. The world was ghost quiet, except for the crack of sails and the burbling of water against hull. The words quiet, crack, and burbling engage the sense of hearing. Notice that Bacall doesn't use the generic word, sound. Each word he chooses evokes a particular quality of sound. Then, like an artist laying on washes of color to give the sense of texture to a painting, he adds another layer, motion, the crack of sails, and touch, the burbling of water against hull. Finally, he gives us an abstract connection by linking the word quiet with the word ghost. Not quiet as a ghost, which would put a distancing layer of simile between the reader and the experience. Instead, Bacall creates the metaphor ghost quiet for an implied rather than overt comparison. Writers are always told to avoid cliches because there's very little engagement for the reader in an overused image such as red as a rose, but give them love began on a beach. It began that day when Jacob saw Annette in her stewed cherry dress. And their brains engage in the absorbing task of figuring out what a stewed cherry dress is like. Suddenly, they're on a beach about to fall in love. They're experiencing the story at both a visceral and a conceptual level, meeting the writer halfway in the imaginative play of creating a dynamic world of the senses. So when you write, use well-chosen words to engage sound, sight, taste, touch, smell, and movement. Then create unexpected connotations among your story elements and set your readers' brushfire imaginations alight.
All right, so that was a good description of number 2, to use very descriptive language and imagery. I was reminded of it as I was watching that again that, and this might be unique to me, but growing up, Alice in the Wonderland really scared me. I don't know why, but it freaked me out. That and the one with the Wicked Witch from the East. I don't know why I'm blanking on that, but that scared me.
It's the West. That's Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Wizard of
We
Oz.
read fiction for many reasons.
Stop.
To be entertained.
Wizard of Oz 2 is even scarier if you ever saw the sequel. Okay, so let's look at number 3. Because the flying monkeys in the Wizard of Oz 2, like our essential character, oh my gosh, freaked me out. So the third technique that we're going to look at today is using a good hook. So that doesn't necessarily mean just one sentence at the beginning, but your hook needs to be somewhere in the beginning. It looks like, thanks for you guys putting these links in the chat. So let's look at another essay that was written and kind of look at how this person uses a hook. If any of you guys identify as fish, I'm sorry if that analogy scares you. So this guy is William, and he's going to write about, he's a solver of Rubik's Cubes. So his hook, he starts by just kind of talking about not his past life, but he kind of takes you into like a present day in his life, what it's like. And then he kind of hits you with this, well, he's dyslexic. And so you're just kind of reading along and you're just like, oh, that's kind of cool. Walks around, plays Rubik's Cube. Maybe you play Rubik's Cube as well. And then you're identifying with that. And then you're like, bam, and I'm dyslexic, right? So that's a good, like, it's a hook because it draws you in and then it kind of surprises you. And then he shifts to his I believe statement. And then this guy also uses the metaphor of a mirror to kind of have you look, kind of look at yourself. And then he pivots again. So he's going to, like the other guy, he's going to take us back to his young self. So he's going to flash back to an experience when he's younger. Okay, let's see how good old William gets this horse going. And then we'll look at what else he does. So I carry a Rubik's Cube in my backpack. Solving it quickly is a terrific conversation starter and surprisingly impressive to girls. I've been asked to solve the cube on the New York City subway, at a track meet in Westchester, and at a cafe in Paris. I usually ask people to try it first. They turn the cube over in their hands. Half-heartedly, they make a few moves, and then sheepishly, they hand it back. Look at that very specific language, sheepishly. They don't even know where to begin. That's exactly what it was like for me to learn how to read. Nice comparison. Letters and words were scrambled and out of sequence. Nothing made sense because I'm dyslexic. That is a good hook. Solving the Rubik's Cubes has made me believe that sometimes you have to take a few steps back to move forward. This was a mirror of my own life when I had to leave public school after the fourth grade. It's embarrassing to admit, but I still couldn't consistently spell my full name correctly. As a fifth grader at a new school that specialized in what's called language processing disorder, I had to start over. Memorizing symbols for letters, I learned the pieces of the puzzles of language, the phonics that make up words. I spent the next 4 years learning how to learn and find strategies that allowed me to return to my district high school with the ability to communicate my ideas and express my intelligence. Okay, that's a great beginning. So now um, he's going to take because he's jumping between past and present, right? So he's going to tie that back together, the past and the present. And then, so he's going to add some depth to this, I believe, statement, right? So he's going to make it a little bit more than just stepping back to move forward. And then he's going to pivot again. He's going to tell you the results of his belief, how it's changed and impacted his life. And then again, towards the end, he's going to tie the parts of his essay together, which is a really smart strategy. And then he's going to kind of surprise you at the end and get back to that whole impressing girls statement. And you're like, good job, William, or Willie. I don't know if he goes by Willie, but I'm going to call William Willie. So let's look at how he did that. Okay, so yeah, we left off here. It took me 4 weeks to teach myself to solve the cube, the same amount of time it took the inventor, Iran Rubik. Now I can easily solve the 3x3x3 and the 4x4x4 and the professor's cube, the 5x5x5. I discovered that just before it's solved, a problem can look like a mess, and then suddenly you can find the solution. I believe that progress comes in unexpected leaps. That's kind of an addition to his belief statement too. Early in my Rubik's Cube career, I became so frustrated that I took the cube apart and rebuilt it. Anybody have you done that? I believe that sometimes you have to look deeper and in unexpected places to find answers. I've noticed that I can talk or focus on other things and still solve the cube. There must be an independent part of my brain at work, able to process information. The Rubik's Cubes taught me that to accomplish something big, it helps to break it down into small pieces. I learned that it is important to spend a lot of time thinking to try and find corrections and connections and patterns. I believe that there are surprises around the corner, and that the Rubik's Cube and we are more than just the sum of our parts. It's getting all philosophical. Like a difficult text or sometimes life like itself, the Rubik's Cube can be a frustrating puzzle. So I carry one in my backpack as a reminder that I can attain my goals no matter what obstacles I face. And did I mention that being able to solve the cube is surprisingly impressive to girls? All right, so that's a good use. I mean, he's doing a bunch of things in there, but that's a good use of that technique. I guess William's a ladies' man. So I wanted us to just see kind of these three techniques in action and to kind of have some examples of those. Jace, that video wants to play. Okay, so what I want to give you some time to do is I want you to look at your rough drafts, and I want you to spend some time just trying to apply one of these three techniques. Maybe you're applying multiple of them, but just try it out. It's this what we call drafting. So it might improve your essay, it might not. You might like make a couple tweaks here, tell a story there, and you're like, oh yeah, that totally worked, or that didn't. In drafting, the key is just to try. So to do this, and I'm watching the chat, there's a lot of talks about movies and stuff like that. So I'm going to put you in an individual breakout room so you can continue on your drafting. If you want to show your rough draft to somebody else and get some feedback, or you're just like, hey, I'd like to write with somebody else, let me know. and I can always shuffle you around in the breakout rooms. So maybe Jacob, you're like, hey, can I read Max work? I'd like to work with Max, and kind of give each other some suggestion. That would totally work. But I'm gonna need to know that. So in the chat, can you say, hey, can you put me with this person? But really, I just want you to do some drafting and improve your writing using these 3 techniques. And I want to check in with you too. Do we have any questions, concerns, or needs? Okay, it looks like we have 1 pair going on. All right, well, I'll continue to watch the chat. Work on your rough drafts, try out some of those techniques. I have no objections so far to Peter and the Wolf. So it looks like that's what we're doing on Thursday, the second part of Thursday as well. I'm gonna make some popcorn for that event. To move you around, you have to first join the breakout room, and then I usually say fire you over, but that's so violent. I will transfer you to the other location. It looks like more people are wanting to pair up. All right, Tammy's in 14. All right, 22 is Liam. Hey, I was just looking at my email over the break, like between classes, and I realized I haven't given you feedback, so I'll do that now.